Remember the days when your kids went off to college and you'd slip them a $100 bill as they left? Soon, if your kid plays sports, you could be the one asking for a few bucks when you visit. Hey, Dad, if you don't spend it all, bring me back my change next week before the Florida game. In today's Extra Point, we'll talk about the biggest NCAA news since, well, ever. Before we get to that, we'll lead off with LSU's incredible comeback against South Carolina that has put them in the SEC baseball semifinals, and a large chunk of the show will be talking about the Saints and how more than ever the running back position in New Orleans will be the key to a successful offense under new coordinator Klint Kubiak. So much to talk about, so little time. Hey, let's not waste any more time. Let's get to it. It's the Dattitude podcast, and it's coming up next.
If you're looking for the latest scoop and in-depth interviews on the Saints, the NFL, the Pelicans, LSU, along with the best bets of the week, then lucky you. Along with high-powered, in-the-know guests who cover our teams, Jim Derry brings plenty of Dattitude. And he'll always tell you the way it is, or at least the way he thinks it is.
Where you at, New Orleans? And hello to my friends elsewhere, everywhere, out there who have realized little Johnny down the street might make more money one day playing college football than you have your entire career. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. We got so much to talk about this morning, and we're going to do it on Dattitude, episode number 243, presented by Evangeline Securities for a Friday, May the 24th, 24th, the 24th of the 20, I don't know, whatever. You know who we are, where we are. I am Jim Derry. I am your host. I'm the only one. This is the only thing you're going to see on this screen, besides a couple different slides. It's just me today. Is that good or bad? We'll find out soon enough. Got so much to talk about today. I wanted to do this one alone because there are some things that I even had to take out of the show today because we're so jam-packed. So we're going to be counting on you. You know what? We're going to have you. That is one thing that will be different. We're going to spend more time talking to you. And if you want to be a part of the show, as always, you can comment. You know how to do it. Whether you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, we will show the comment on the screen. You got a question, ask it. We'll show that on the screen. We thank you for being a part of the Dattitude family on this Friday morning. Also, if you're listening, of course, after the fact on any number of places, whether it be on Apple or Spotify. I can't say Google anymore. You know, Google's getting rid of their podcast. Just found that out. So no longer, I think it's still there, but I think Google's going bye-bye. So I got to take that out of my script. Can't just Apple, Spotify, all the major platforms. You can send in a comment via email at jderry@theadvocate.com. Also, a reminder to subscribe to our Dattitude YouTube page. Click the little bell to receive notifications when we go on the air live. Okay. Really, I mean, there is just so much to talk about. My extra point this afternoon, or this morning, I guess, a lot of you, when you listen, it'll be this afternoon. But I originally was going to talk about this. So what got eliminated from the extra point because of the NCAA thing yesterday, it was talking about the Dome and the Saints and their little disagreement in the media. What is going on with that? That is so weird. They're disputing each other through the media. I don't understand that. Jerry, hello. Happy Friday. It is Friday. Tulane, sports news, semis of the AAC. You are absolutely right. A big win. Tulane Green Wave. You thought the LSU, they were the cardiac cats that we showed on the main screen. Tulane's been doing it late as well. And they are now in the semis of the AAC. They're trying to make it in the regionals. I think the Green Wave need to win the AAC to get in. Yeah. If they win the championship, we'll talk about them next week on Dattitude for sure. Mike, LSU baseball going back to back. We're getting ahead of ourselves, Mike. I'll tell you my thoughts on that in just a minute, and you're more than welcome to chime in when you hear what I have to say or whatever. But Yeah, this tete-a-tete, I guess, with the Saints and Superdome, Jeff Duncan makes it out like it's a big deal. I don't think so. I don't think so. This is something we're definitely going to talk about next week because I know I'll give you a little preview. I think it's next Friday, May 31st, is the anniversary of when Tom Benson officially bought the Saints from John Meekum. I think it was $72 million. Can you imagine? $72 million. Also today, we can't talk about this. This would have been a good extra point. We got so many damn extra points. We can't kick them all. But today, 30 years ago today, the Times-Picayune, and I talk about this every now and then. I don't know if you people remember this. Anyone over the age of probably 45, 48 will remember this. The Saints were in negotiations to buy the Minnesota Timberwolves. And they had come to an agreement with the owners of the Timberwolves and looked like all the world that the T-Wolves were moving to New Orleans. Could you imagine if that would have happened? Would they even still be here? It was going to force the state's hand to build what is now known as the Smoothie King Center. They ended up building it anyway, figuring they would get another NBA franchise. But I think the NBA told them that's what they would need to do. But anyway, they had agreed to buy the Minnesota Timberwolves. There was a big discussion. Okay, I was just a young pup in the newsroom of the Times-Picayune. So it'll be 34 years for me in August. So just shy of 4 years into the business. I was an ag clerk at the time. And I remember the late, great Pete Finney and Bob Rossler arguing with one another about whether the deal was actually done or not. And the paper, and I should have made a copy of it to at least show you on here. We may talk about this again at some point, but the paper on the front page ran a jersey of the Timberwolves. That's all. The whole front page was nothing but a Timberwolves jersey with the red letters "Got 'em" across the front. You guys remember that? Yeah, we had to eat crow a little bit. That is by far the biggest mistake that the paper ever made, at least while I was around. There were a couple other big ones that, I'm not going to go through them, but there were some other big ones, but nothing like that. Running a jersey of the Timberwolves saying "Got 'em." Whoops, don't got him. Pete Finney was right. He wasn't sure the deal was done. Bob Rossler was, and Pete Finney was the one who was right on that. So that's going way back. 30 years ago today. That's you want to talk about feeling old? I was basically Gabe Henderson's age. That's how long ago that was. I almost don't even remember that. A couple other things, too. There's one thing that is very topical, I guess, this morning. I don't know, even if you're not into baseball, there was a moment last night. Just goes to show how umpiring has taken a downturn. And, if you were watching the LSU game last night, you might have been bitching about the home plate umpire, who I thought was awful. For both teams. I thought his strike zone was inconsistent. He was calling pitches that were above the letter strikes. He was calling them outside strikes. There was no consistency whatsoever. Just another reason that we need to think about, and I would have never been for this even 5 or 8 years ago, but we need to think about doing computerized strike zones. All you need to do is have a green and a red light back there. When it goes through the strike zone, it's green for a strike, red for a ball. Terrence. Yeah, man. You know what I'm talking about. But anyway, there was an ending last night that I think you guys need to see. I've been watching baseball for as long as I can remember. I have never seen an ending like this in my life. And shout out to my old colleague and my friend Gene Gilliott. We worked together. He sent me this. And it's about a minute and a half, but it's worth watching. I may cut it off at some point because we don't need to hear the announcers. By the way, the announcers, this comes from NBC Sports Chicago. This is how the White Sox-Orioles game ended last night. Runners on first and second with one out when this play happens. The announcers are John Schriffen and my old favorite Steve Stone, who used to be the Cubs color analyst. You've got to see this. Again, even if you don't like baseball, it's going to make you go, what? WTF. Let's just put it that way.
And Benintendi pops it up on the infield. And Henderson will make the catch. They call it infield fly rule. No, they called interference.
They're calling him out. I believe they're calling the game over.
Wait a minute. They're calling game over. They're saying Andrew Vaughn interfered with Henderson at short. So they're calling Vaughn out. Let's take a look at this, Steve.
Well, Andrew did not do anything intentionally to deal at all with Henderson because he never saw him. Look, he doesn't know where Henderson is. Henderson's in back of him.
And he's just going back to the bag.
And he chooses to go around him. You got to go back to the bag.
No, they can't end the game like this.
Well, it's an infield fly rule, and
no way.
This would be an unbelievable ending.
Adrian Johnson, as the crew chief, you got to take over here.
I'll tell you. Again, I've seen some crazy things, and this is a perfect example of my problem, and it's more prevalent. I know a lot of you who don't watch baseball think it's this way in every sport, and maybe it is to some degree because it is in basketball. It probably goes baseball, basketball, football in this order. But umpires, and in case for those of you who listen later on the podcast, basically the quick description of it was, as you heard him say, it was just an infield fly rule that the runner was going back to second. The play's basically dead. I don't understand it at all. And they called the runner interfering with the shortstop's ability to catch the ball. It's an infield fly rule. Doesn't even matter if he catches the ball. If the ball drops, it's still an out. And he caught it easily. He literally took a half a step to his right to get around the runner who was going back to the bag, which is what he has to do. But again, the problem with umpiring and refereeing, and Gabe says soccer refereeing is bad too, but sometimes these guys are so stubborn and no one holds them accountable. They're so stubborn when they make a call, they realize it's wrong and they don't change their minds. That's why in football, one thing I like is you'll see this way more often in football, I think, than in any other sport. Sometimes too much. You'll see them get together and talk about a call. Why can't we just do that? Why can't we use common sense in sports? Rocky, am I sure Angel Hernandez didn't train that? Rocky, I'll tell you what I'm surprised about, that Angel Hernandez wasn't a part of that crew. It's just baseball has got to change some things with the way they umpire baseball games. Again, balls and strikes at maybe every level, and you can't do anything about it at the lower levels. You can't do anything about it in high school, I don't think, at least not yet. But you've got to change this. It's got to be changed. You make a call that's wrong. Why isn't everything reviewable? Another thing. I think in every sport, if you have a review, you should be able to review whatever the hell you want to review. That's not reviewable. Why? Why is it not reviewable? I don't understand. So anyway, I don't want to waste too much time talking about this morning, but I thought it was fun to show and also at the same time kind of eye-opening. Because, again, it's not just in baseball. It's across every sport. I think baseball is the worst. But we need to do something about officiating in every sport and every level. And I have a lot of official friends out there, who are officials, and I love them, and some of them are fantastic. Most of them are fantastic officials, and they really care about what they're doing. And then you get to the professional level and you see stuff like that. Can't happen. Can't happen. All right, let's move on with the show. You see all the topics we got on the left side of the screen. That's how we're going to spend the rest of this show, getting to what we have here, talking about the Saints and Klint Kubiak's offense. We're going to lead off with LSU. What a rally last night. How important is that rally, by the way? Does this move them into the talk for a potential 2 seed? They're not going to get a 1 seed. But I'm going to tell you what their RPI is. I'm going to tell you what their odds to win the College World Series are. It will shock some of you. Remember we were talking about on Monday they were 40-1. It's a little different today. Tigers are on a big roll. There's no doubt about it. And if they can find a way to beat the winner of the Kentucky-South Carolina game tomorrow, they got a day off now. If they can find a way to win that game, they could be in really good shape to win the SEC championship, and I'll tell you why. And then, of course, the extra point. Show me the money. That's what we're going to be talking about later on. But first, give me a moment to continue the story about my friends at Evangeline Securities. You know by now that they are a company that can help you decide if it's the right time to sell your business and what that business might be worth. Is that you? Not only are there so few companies in Louisiana that can help you figure out the question of the future of your life, there are none like Evangeline Securities. We understand it could be a tough decision, especially if your company was founded decades ago by your father or mother, or maybe even your grandfather or grandmother, or even beyond in your family tree. But if you've been thinking about it, you owe it to yourself to make an initial inquiry, don't you? Ponder that for a moment as we continue the show. And before today's extra point, we will expand, expand, E-X-P-A-N-D, expand and tell you in the second half of how Evangeline Securities can be the answer to the rest of your life. In the meantime, while you're listening to this lovely podcast, of course, you can visit www.evangelinesecurities.com. All right, let's move on this morning and talk about, let's start off with the LSU baseball team. First, Rocky. The only way it changes in any sport is to review everything and then hold the umps and refs accountable. Absolutely. No one's held accountable. You know, another thing that I hate is when they come out and say, well, that call was wrong. What are you going to do about it? Nothing. They don't do anything about it. They'll come out and tell you a couple of days later the call was wrong. Sometimes they don't even tell you. They just tell the team. Because every team in every league can send a grievance with whatever franchise, whatever league they're in, and they'll get an answer. Who knows? I don't even know how long it takes. They'll get an answer. Yeah, that call was wrong. Well, I mean, do something about it. I'm not saying you got to throw the umps in the stockade, but I mean, good Lord. Nothing's ever done to these people. Angel Hernandez. Again, if anybody watches baseball, you might not even have to watch baseball to know who Angel Hernandez is. He's the worst umpire on the planet. It's not me saying this. It's the entire baseball community that says this. But yet the guy is never disciplined, and he always has a job. Why? All right, as we move on to LSU baseball this morning, again, we're asking for comments and questions. You can be a part of the show. It's just me this morning. You can be a big part of the show. Gabe's going to be a part of the show. One thing that struck me last night as we get into the LSU baseball team and how they played in the SEC tournament, obviously they had to do it in a different way yesterday, right? They're down 5-1. They come back right away. 5-5. Don't waste any time. Then they get down again. Well, they take a lead, actually, and then they get down again. 10-7 going in the 8th inning. I mean, hello, JJ. They make this comeback, and they don't just do it with a bomb. 2 runs in the 8th, and then the 2 runs in the 9th. And look, Braswell's hit, big-time hit. How much was he loving that against his former team? But one thing about LSU is it's just different when you wear that jersey, isn't it? When you have to win, when you're in a position and when you have to win, there's something about wearing that jersey that gives you more confidence, I think. And this goes true, I think, in football for like Alabama. And it rings true the other way as well. If you're South Carolina, at some point it hits you. You're staring out there and we're playing LSU. And I think that was a part of last night's victory. 31 runs in 3 games, as Gabe says. That's insane. Win it 9-1 in game 1. Knock out Georgia, who's expected to be or projected to be the number 8 seed in the tournament coming up by D1 baseball. Then they beat Kentucky 11-0. I'm not sure if this is going to hold. Excuse me. I'm not sure if this is going to hold, but Kentucky right now is projected to be the number 1 seed in the tournament, and they beat them 11-0 in the SEC tournament. Then Kentucky comes back and wins a big one. So they're into this afternoon's quarterfinals elimination game. The winner will play LSU in the semifinals tomorrow. Then LSU's come back last night. JJ says championship medal from the Tigers. They are a dangerous team in the regional. No one wants to see them. No doubt about it. Can you imagine if you're like, I don't know, if you're like the 15 seed currently, you get the 15 seed right now, let's say RPI wise, 15 is Oklahoma State, 16 is Oregon State. Can you imagine if you get one of those teams, if you're one of those teams and you find out LSU's in your regional? I don't think they're going to put LSU in a tough region. I don't think they're going to be in any of the top 8 side. I think they're going to be in the bottom half. Will they be a 2 seed? Well, we talked about KPI, something I never heard about until Monday. Koki Riley was on the show, covers LSU baseball for us here at The Advocate. And he was explaining to me what KPI is. It's a new measure, and it goes basically by who you play, how good they are, and how much you win by or lose by in those games. KPI is being used more and more by the committee. And if you look at KPI, an interesting fact there, LSU is 15th in KPI. 15th. Now, they're not going to get a regional. I don't even think if they win the SEC tournament. I know I had a couple people ask me yesterday if I thought that they would get a regional. No, I don't think they're going to get a regional. You can't you can't start 3-12 in the SEC and get a regional, in my opinion. Would it shock me? Actually, yeah, it kind of would. But anyway, in this KPI, of the top 16 teams, to show you how you think it's bad in football where the Power 5 conferences, we're going to talk about the Power 5 conferences later in the extra point. Of the top 16 teams in this KPI, all but one of them is from either the SEC or the ACC. And the only one that is not from the SEC or ACC is Oklahoma, who's going to be in the SEC next year. It's crazy how baseball works. Will it matter? I don't know. But I tell you what is going to be the downfall for this team, and how can they win another championship? They have. It's so important, and I know Jay Johnson knows this. He's proven this already. To me, the biggest problem with this LSU team that maybe they had a little bit last year, but they overcame it. It's a little bit different this year. Is beyond Gage Jump and Luke Holman. Their pitching is just not good. And I know you could say that about a lot of teams, but I think this team, more than any other, they have to stay in winners brackets. Going forward, when they get into a regional, if they get into a super regional, you have a winners bracket. You play best 2 out of 3. But if they get to the College World Series somehow, they're going to have to stay. If they have any chance to win a championship, more important for them than maybe a lot of the other teams is to stay in the winners bracket. Also, if they go forward, if they win this SEC championship, let's say they play Saturday, they beat Kentucky or South Carolina, good chance that Gage Jump and Luke Holman would be the combo for Sunday. More Gage Jump than Holman, because Jump would have to pitch again on 4 days rest. Then you go into next week in the regional. How does that affect you? Does he have to do it again? Pitch on 4 days rest again? Do you start Holman? And also, does the momentum, it's so hard. Again, we saw LSU do this last year after the SEC tournament, not in the SEC tournament, but after. It is so hard when you expend all your emotion and energy to get to a certain place, and then you get there. How do you hold that emotion? It's a hard thing to do. I'm not sure if they can do it or not. But these odds are absurd. Monday, we talked about 40-1. They went from 25-1 last week when we were doing this show. They were 25-1 to win the College World Series. LSU was. They sweep Ole Miss, and their odds jump from 25-1 to 40-1 in that short period of time. Why? Because they had an elimination game against Georgia. If they didn't win the game against Georgia, I think those numbers showed that maybe it wasn't enough. Maybe they wouldn't get in. I mean, we'll never know, and it doesn't matter. But to show how much their odds have changed, they went to 20-1 after they beat Georgia. And now they're an absurd 14-1. Of all the odds in the College World Series, okay, you take all the odds on DraftKings, put them all together in an order. LSU right now is 7th. They have the 7th lowest odds to win the College World Series. You can't bet them. Okay, we talk about value when you're betting. There's no value in LSU. It's not even worth a fun bet. Just watch them and enjoy it. You can't bet it. That's an absurd number. There's no way. There's no way. They should be more like 25-1. I think they should have been probably 30-35-1 last week, maybe even 40-1. And right now, I think they should be at least 25-1. Terrence, I'm 52. This is the first season I'm convinced that balls and strikes must be automated. Half the SEC umps are wildly inconsistent game to game and within a game. Absolutely. And we've seen different, I thought the first couple games for LSU, there were a couple balls and strikes calls I didn't like. But I thought there was some consistency there. Last night, that guy was all over the place. Thought he was terrible. So, yeah, going back to and you know what, Terrence, you're 52. I'm a little older than you. I think 50 or 51 or 52 is about when I started changing my opinion on that as well. I'm in an old school. I'm traditional, so I don't like change all that much. I'm starting to – it's funny because you think as the older you are, you become more conservative, I guess, and hate change even more. I'm actually more open to change probably now than I've ever been. Again, we're going to see that in the extra point when I talk about the NCAA. But I think you got to do it. You've got to find a way, at least started in the minor leagues, and I know they've done some experimenting with it. You've got to change this umpiring. It would take a while to get to the college level, but they got to do it. Rocky, based on reputation alone, the constant of LSU baseball in the NCAA, I think they sneak into – no way. I love you, Rocky. Thank you for being a part of the show lately. I know you've come on board the last few months, and I appreciate and I thank everyone that is a part of the Dattitude family. So I don't mean this to be mean, but no way. There's no way they could win the semifinals 15-0 and win the championship 15-0. Doesn't matter. They're not getting a regional. You just can't. You can't go 3-12. You just can't. It's their own doing. But you got to think also part of that 3-12, and I'm not making any excuses for them, but part of that 3-12 also was the fact that Jay Johnson was figuring. It just took him a little bit longer. You could say good or bad. It shouldn't take you that long, whatever. But it just took them a little longer to figure this team out. That's where they are. So semifinals tomorrow afternoon, LSU. I got to think it's Kentucky, don't you? You said you could be wrong. I'm not trying to chastise you. I love opinions. We want them. I'm not discouraging anyone from sharing their opinions on here. Please, by all means. Other people watching the show, type in your comment or question. We'll see it here, and I'll put it on the screen. Look, it just took him longer. That's all. So now the semifinals, I think it's going to be Kentucky. I don't see how South Carolina comes back from last night. They got swept in their last two SEC series, so they've made quite a run. They're in the tournament. Okay, they're in the tournament as well. And how many teams from the SEC are going to get in the tournament? 10? Maybe even 11. Has that ever happened? 11 teams from one conference in the tournament? I don't know. All right, time to move on to the Saints. Good or bad? Right now, it's whatever. OTAs began this week, the voluntary OTAs, and they will run this week, next week, and the week after. Some notable players missing. We talked on Wednesday with Doug Mouton about Marshawn Lattimore not being there. Is it a big deal? He says no. Probably is no. He's never – well, he hasn't saying never. He hasn't been a voluntary OTA since 2020. It does concern me, though, that all this talk about, oh, he's coming back. He's coming. I mean, ESPN they wrote a headline saying that Marshawn Lattimore's coming back. They didn't say Dennis Allen saying Marshawn Lattimore's coming back. He's coming back. We were a little bit more conservative in our headline and the way we wrote the story. Matt Paris wrote the story a little bit differently, that there was a quote-unquote positive talk between Dennis Allen and Marshawn Lattimore. Let's keep it positive, brother. But there was some positive talk there. That doesn't mean jack to me. Positive talk, great. The Saints are trying to get their cap situation straight. And if you keep Marshawn Lattimore and this team starts out poorly, there aren't a lot of big-time trades in the NFL before the trade deadline. That's a potential trade. But today I want to talk about the running backs, and we're going to spend some time over the course of this week and next week talking about Klint Kubiak's offense. And I told you earlier in the week we're going to have on Adam Chernoff, who is, in my opinion, the top handicapper around. I don't want to say in the country because he actually lives in Canada, but he's one of my favorite guests that we've ever had on this show at Bayou Bets because he knows what he's talking about. I'm not just saying that. And I heard him in his preview, AdamChernoff.com. He was talking about his early preview of the Saints and what Klint Kubiak's offense could mean to this team. And I don't think it's going to look that much different than what San Francisco's been running. They talk about all these different formations, but run the same plays out of them. Or I'm sorry, the similar formations, but run so many different plays out of these formations so you don't know what's coming at you. And the running backs are going to play a much larger part than they've ever played before, at least not in the recent past. Even under Sean Payton, who valued a running back more than most coaches do, I think it's going to be even more so now. And you go back and look at what the Niners did. The Niners were in a world of hurt until they traded for Christian McCaffrey, if you remember. Everything changed for them when they traded. And you can say, oh, yeah, he's Christian McCaffrey, but he wasn't doing anything with the Carolina. I mean, he was when he first got in the NFL, but he went through a couple years where he was injury-prone, had lots of trouble, and all of a sudden rejuvenated, and things are different when he goes to San Francisco. Is that going to be Alvin Kamara? Is Alvin Kamara going to do what Christian McCaffrey did in San Francisco? Now, he's a little bit older, but certainly this offense is going to kind of run around Alvin Kamara, more so than Chris Olave, or more so than, I mean, you can't say more so than Derek Carr, because obviously the quarterback's the key to any offense. But to give Derek Carr a chance, Alvin Kamara has to be the Alvin Kamara of old, or pretty close to it. And beyond that, his two complementary running backs, Kendra Miller and Jamal Williams, only one of whom's at OTAs. Kamara, we know, is not at OTAs. Well, Jamal Williams isn't there either. And I think that's a problem. I think this group needs to have as much time together as possible. You start forming how things are going to be run, how you can be successful. You do that in mini camps as much as you do it in training camps. When you get to training camp, the train should be running. And I think that those two guys not being there, especially Jamal Williams, I think it's a problem. Now, I don't know what his deal is. I don't know why he's not there. But next 2 weeks of voluntary OTAs and then mandatory minicamp June 11th through 13th. I think we're going to learn a lot about the chances of this team. That's why I've been hesitant to give a prediction on what I thought their record might be. And I've been giving them, but I also use the caveat of my opinion is subject to change, because what I'm going to be watching more than anything, especially on offense, are two things: how these running backs gel, how they are going to distribute the football. I really like that Taysom Hill has been in the backfield. I think he's going to get more use being served back there. You hate the thought of Taysom Hill being like a fullback, a glorified Kyle Juszczyk is what he may become. He's still going to line up a lot of tight end. I think he's going to play a big part in this offense. And I don't think we can really fathom what's going to happen with Taysom Hill until we see more of it. But I like the concept of what Klint Kubiak is doing and getting Taysom Hill. What was one of the biggest problems besides, we're not going to get into all the problems with Pete Carmichael, but one of the things that probably bothered me more than anything about his offense is when in games where I thought the Saints offense played well, Taysom was highly involved. And then the very next game, he would just disappear. Like, where's Taysom Hill? I mean, like, completely disappear. Like, not on the field, disappear. And so I don't think one thing I think you will see with this Kubiak offense is consistency. I don't think it will change. They're not going to give up on the run game. They're not going to just, run it into the line as they've been doing. I just think that the running game, not just the concept of how to use it, but the scheme. And the scheme of blocking is obviously most important with this team, which goes to my next problem. This offensive line. We've talked about it over and over again. We're seeing Fuanga get reps in voluntary minicamp. We saw it in rookie camp and now in voluntary OTAs. Call it OTAs, minicamp, whatever you want to call it. It's the same deal. But we've seen Fuanga lining up at left tackle. And we've seen Penning lining up at right tackle. Doug Mouton was on the show, and the optimistic point of view, if you missed Wednesday's show, the optimistic point of view is that the Saints think Ryan Ramczyk will be ready. And so they're giving Fuanga reps at left tackle because they think Ramczyk will be ready. They're training Penning to be the backup at right tackle. if you want to be the glass is half full kind of guy, I'm going to be realistic. And I'm not saying it negatively. I'm not going to say I'm glass half empty because I think it is what it is. I think Fuanga is lining up to play left tackle because they know he might be the only one that's not injured on this team that can protect Derek Carr's backside. You worry about the other positions later. I don't see how Ryan Ramczyk makes it back. I just don't. Maybe they know something I don't. I hope they do. But when you're talking about the injuries that he's suffered, the contract that he basically took the minimum for this coming year. Maybe he's doing the Saints a favor. Maybe he knows he's not playing. One of the two. Or both of the two. I don't know. I wouldn't get my hopes up on Ryan Ramczyk. And if Ryan Ramczyk isn't there, now you have a hole to me at right tackle and left guard. Does this force your hand? Are you forced to go out and get a veteran free agent? I said I'll show comments. If this is what you believe, Karras, Saints suck. Boo. Maybe they will. You know what? I don't know that I can say that they're not going to. I think they have this team has a chance to be really good. I know some people don't believe that. We've had the 17-0 comments. I mean, come on, they're not going to be 17-0. They're not going to be 11-6 probably. But we've had the positive comments and we've had the 4-13 comments. I don't think they're going to be either of those. I think they're going to be somewhere in the middle. I mean, right now, with that early part of the schedule, and that's another thing we're going to get into. And I go into it on 4th down and 4 on Sunday with Doug Mouton. I don't know if you guys remember, but last year I did my my own strength of schedule formula based off of the projected win-losses by Vegas. I mean, who knows more about what these teams are going to do than Las Vegas? They don't lose money, right? They win money for a reason. They take your money for a reason. And using this formula, while the Saints, the Saints have the 4th easiest schedule in the NFL based off of my formula. However, that being said, the first 5 games of their schedule, if you take that and extrapolate that over the course of a season, you take those 5 games, and the number is not going to matter to you. You won't understand what the number means, but this will just show you. By my formula, you come out with a point system, okay? And the hardest schedule in the league, according to my formula, is the Pittsburgh Steelers at 9.11. Okay. Again, you don't know what that number means. It doesn't matter. But if you take the Saints' first 5 games of their schedule, so the hardest schedule in the entire league for the season is 9.11. If you take the Saints' first 5 games, it adds up in my formula to 9.71. So that's how much different it is. That's how hard first 5 games of the schedule are. They have to go 2-3, in my opinion. And then we'll see. But they're going to have to do it with running backs who, frankly, weren't all that effective last year, other than number 41. And even he wasn't as good as he's been. A lot of that has to do with the offensive line. But now you're wasting time in voluntary OTAs by not all being there and not gelling, not getting together and learning this new offense. You know, I know Kamara doesn't always. Sometimes he does his own thing, flies his own way. I get it. But what the hell is Jamal Williams doing? What did he do last year? He should be there. He should be soaking up every bit of this. Kendra Miller's there. And you know what? Kendra Miller could be what we all hoped he would be. I think he has a chance to do that. But why aren't they all there? Rocky. They can start 3-3. They can win 10. It's a big if, but the potential is there. I don't disagree with that. If somehow they start 3-3, and the formula to me to start in 3-3 is this. I don't think you're going to, and I'm not going to put the schedule on the screen. We've done that enough, and you know it by now for the most part. But Dallas in week 2 at Dallas, I just don't think they're going to win that game. Can they win? Of course. But they're 6-point underdogs right now, 6.5-point underdogs. By the game comes, they'll probably be more like 7-point underdogs. I mean, Dallas isn't unbeatable on the road, but it's a tough place to play. We've seen Dallas last year. How many points did they put up early in the season last year at home? They were averaging like 40 points a game at home for a little bit there in the early part of the season. They're tough to beat at home. So I'm throwing that one out. I don't think they can beat Dallas on the road, and I don't think they can beat Kansas City. So there are 2 games I don't think they can win. So right there, you're talking about 2 losses. So obviously Carolina's a must-win, which means you got to win at least one of the others between Philadelphia at home or Atlanta on the road. They can. Will they? I don't know. JJ thinks and says they could beat Philly. Sure. I don't know that Philly's going to be that great this year. I think they'll be better than last year, but I don't think they'll be as good as they were when they went to the Super Bowl. Then you play Tampa Bay in week 6. A-Town, welcome back. You believe the Saints will sign a good left tackle and a left guard? My thoughts. I think that they're kind of backed into a corner. They just signed a guard. I think they need to sign David Bakhtiari. I don't know that they will. I don't even know if they'll even reach out, or maybe they have reached out already. I don't know. I think post-June 1 is when we're going to find out more about this team. All the post-June 1 guys are going to become available. We're going to find out about Marshawn Lattimore. It won't take long. You'll find out about Marshawn Lattimore June 1, 2, or 3. My opinion. I think if they're going to do something, they've already worked it out. Although if they've already worked it out, why are they telling us that he's coming back? Why is Dennis Allen telling us he's coming back? So maybe he really thinks he's coming back. I don't know. The Saints don't sign a veteran tackle, they will struggle badly. I agree. Again, even if Fawanga, who's playing out of position at left tackle, goes over there, will he do a good job? Hope so. Who's going to play right tackle? You're going to count on Trevor Penning? Haven't we seen this movie before? Problem is they might not have a choice. They really might not have a choice. Landon Young? I don't know. Ali Udo, who's more suited to be a guard. Good chance he'll be the left guard. I don't know. Can he play tackle too? He has in the past. Kenny on this team. I mean, that's not ideal. I mean, the problem is, again, you're talking about a team that clearly had a bottom 5 offensive line last year by every measure. You go anywhere and find offensive rankings, line rankings from last year. They're all going to have the Saints in the bottom 5. And the problem is if they don't make any changes real soon, they don't get one more guy who is a real starter for this team. And sure, they got a lot of number 2 guys. I like that fact. I like that they've shored up and gone out and got some number 2 guys. That's great. Add depth to your offensive line. The problem is you can't have a bunch of number 2s and expect to win. That doesn't make your offensive line any better than it was last year. Sal DeVere, can he play left guard? Maybe. But then you're going to count on a completely inexperienced guy to play left guard? Again, who's going to play tackle? Are you counting on Penning? If you're counting on Penning, that's bad news. That's my opinion. I haven't completely given up that Trevor Penning can become a starting tackle in this league. But they need to get someone in here and help him learn how to do it. And these coaches, maybe they can help him. Can they help him in this short amount of time? I don't know. But we might be finding out. So this running back system, again, we talked about it, and how the difference for Kubiak between what was here with Carmichael. Alvin Kamara's going to be 29 years old. He's still got some left in the tank. He's got to be Alvin Kamara. And what I mean by that, obviously, is he's got to be 27-year-old Alvin Kamara, 26-year-old Alvin Kamara. Can he do that? I don't know. Rocky is Kubiak's high on Oli Udo. Yeah, because he started 15 games when Kubiak was the offensive coordinator in Minnesota a few years ago. So maybe that is one of the answers. I don't know. We'll see. All right, time to move on with the show. And before I get to the extra point, and again, the extra point today, I'm sure unless you live under a rock, you know about the NCAA and what happened with the NCAA. Is it the most important ruling in the history of the NCAA? Certainly one of them. And to me, it's certainly the most important ruling since Title IX. This lawsuit and this agreement is going to change the landscape of the NCAA. It's already been sort of changed by NIL. It's even more changed now. But before we get to that, let me tell you real quick about my friends at Evangeline Securities. We've been talking about them for a couple months now. I didn't realize it was a couple months until I went back and looked. Well, a month and a half. And let me continue the story. Give me a second about how Evangeline Securities can help you figure out the rest of your life, even if you are pondering selling your business, even if you know someone who's thinking about selling their business. I can promise to you that managing directors Nick Braden and Ron Hemelt care. And that's the reason they came back to their hometown, New Orleans, from New York to help locals find solutions. How does this work? Well, they'll start with a complimentary service that includes a detailed evaluation of your business to figure out its worth. Then they will go through their findings with you. And if you decide to proceed, that's when the real work begins. And no one in Louisiana is better, and I mean this, no one in Louisiana is better prepared to find you a buyer more than Nick and Ron. After they put together a complimentary detailed evaluation of what your business is worth, they will begin an extensive auction process among established private equity funds from across the world. They will maximize the return process for the founder of your company and the founder's family. And when you have your future in your hands and in your bank account, you can party like it's 2009. Who dat? Evangeline Securities is the top producer on their platform. There are very few companies like them in this area and none with their dedication and success. They are fully licensed and ready to serve you. So before you make your plans for where you're going to spend your Saturdays and Sundays in the fall, you have plenty of time to talk to Nick and Ron about what's really important, the rest of your life. You can visit our friends at www.evangelinesecurities.com. All right, today's extra point. Man, we can make a case that it's the only point, not the extra, forget the extra point. That's the only point in NCAA athletics, and one many of the association's athletes have been making for years. They should be paid. While I understand many in my audience here staunchly disagree with the fact that student athletes should be paid anything other than their tuitions, I can only say I completely get it. Remember when I told you about how I was changing? I used to feel the same way. As times changed, so is my opinion on this. On Thursday, a landmark settlement was reached by the NCAA and its Power 5 conferences, soon to be Power 4, but the other one still has to pay. They're going to settle a plethora of antitrust claims to pay nearly $2.8 billion, that's billion with a B, that not only will send money to former athletes, but will pave the way for current and future athletes to eventually be paid to play college sports. The Power 5 conferences call this move, quote, an important step in the continuing reform of college sports that will provide benefits to student athletes and provide clarity in college athletics across all divisions for years to come, unquote. Horse hockey. First off, let's get this straight. The greedy NCAA brought this upon themselves. And by the way, greedy is a nice word because I'm in a good mood today. Had the NCAA just acknowledged there was a problem decades ago with all this revenue they were bringing in and were completely inflexible with the rights of student athletes to earn a living from their own likenesses, they wouldn't be in this position today. When I was growing up and well into my 20s, there simply weren't many options each week to watch college football or basketball, much less baseball or softball. You watched whatever the networks decided they were going to put on TV for you in any given week. If LSU wasn't on TV against South Carolina, well, you listen to John Ferguson or Jim Hawthorne on the radio. Then conferences began to make their own TV deals and started their own networks. And the NCAA relented in football. And they realized having a playoff instead of deciding national champions in bowl games would make them boatloads of cash that the money-hungry top schools could hoard in. They didn't care about whether it was the best way to find the national champion. And they could do this without sharing the wealth. Those days, thankfully, are coming to an end. While we're not yet sure exactly how it's going to work, one can hope they finally do something fairly. It appears as if the NCAA has been floating the idea of eliminating a cap on how many scholarships a school can offer. So this could be a great thing for sports outside of football and basketball. We could spend an entire show on how and why, but we don't have that much time. I encourage everyone who's interested on how this will affect college sports to read some of the dozens of stories that were written yesterday and this morning. Will they pay each athlete the same amount? How will this affect non-Power 5 schools and FBS schools? How will it affect women's sports? As we know, Title IX in this current lawsuit, thankfully, will force the NCAA to include women being paid as well. On the negative side, it very well could force some schools to cut sports programs and quite possibly dump athletics altogether. That would be incredibly sad, but that might be what it takes to reshape the unfair way money has been distributed. I've long said that colleges and universities have not committed nearly enough to their student athletes, which is why I've changed my opinion throughout the years on why I agree the student athlete should not only be compensated beyond the scholarship level, they should also be free to make more choices. Will this lead to the student athlete caring even less about their studies than they do now? It's very possible, but let's be clear about one thing. For decades, the NCAA has viewed their product as a business and not as a tool to advance the student athlete. Why shouldn't they do the same for themselves? So many questions and yet so many answers, but there's no doubt the landscape of the NCAA is changing. Whether it's for the better will take years to find out. I, for one, because of the greed and ineptness from the grown-ups in the room, think that this is the only way to get college sports back on the right track. That is going to wrap it up for this Friday. What do you think? NCAA, greedy? They're greedy. Come on, you can just admit it. Real quick, Rocky. The NCAA ruling, do I think Coach Kelly holds true to his words that LSU is not in the business of paying players? Do you think that LSU will hurt LSU in the long run? Of course, no. Of course he's not true to his word. I mean, what he meant before was they're not going to pay players because it's illegal. You could bet your sweet bippy, just like he's adapted to NILs in the transfer portal, he's going to adapt to paying players, and LSU will too. I mean, you wonder about the schools like the Tulanes of the world, the Northwestern States, the Louisiana Lafayette's, the Louisiana Monroes. You know, Gabe was talking about this yesterday. He thinks it's going to affect state schools. It's going to maybe not kill them, but it's going to change. But FBS is going to be able to pay their players too, probably a lot differently. How it will affect them, I don't know. But the answer is no. No way in the world Brian Kelly sticks to his word on that. He's going to do what everybody else is doing. That is going to wrap it up for this Friday. I want to thank Gabe Henderson behind the scenes. How was the show? Just me. Went longer than I thought it would. I lost track of time because there was so much to talk about. We'll remind you there is no show on Monday as we'll take off for the Memorial holiday here on Dattitude. We hope you can join us next Wednesday. I'm not sure whether Adam Chernoff is going to join us on Wednesday or Friday. We will have a guest on the other day, whatever day that might be. A reminder to subscribe to our Dattitude YouTube page. Please, just take a second. Go over there, go to YouTube, find Dattitude, click subscribe. That's all I'm asking you to do. And if you want to, you don't have to, but if you want to, you can click the little bell to receive notifications when we go on the air live. You can subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and find a replay of the show on NOLA.com/sports. Have an incredible extended Memorial Day weekend, and remember to honor the ones who have fallen so that we can all be free. We will see you on Wednesday. Wednesday. It's only 5 days away. You can wait. We'll see you Wednesday. Take it easy, my friends.
If you're looking for the latest scoop and in-depth interviews on the Saints, the NFL, the Pelicans, LSU, along with the best bets of the week, then lucky you. Along with high-powered, in-the-know guests who cover our teams, Jim Derry brings plenty of Dattitude. And he'll always tell you the way it is, or at least the way he thinks it is.